Hello everyone, welcome to Easy Economics. How are you all doing? Today I brought for you all October-November 2024 0455 and 2281 variant 12. Today we'll be solving MCQs, paper 1. So let's dive directly into the paper today. Alright, MCQ number 1. MCQ number 1 says, which economic question is least likely to arise as a result of scarcity? So now, whenever we are addressing the question of scarcity, there are three fundamental basic economic questions that need to be addressed by each economy, which we all are familiar with. A, what to produce, how to produce, and what's the third one? For whom to produce, right? What to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce, right? All right. So now looking at the three fundamental basic questions, let's see out of these four options available, which is the incorrect response. A says for whom we will produce. That's correct. B says how will we produce. That's again correct. In which question you decide whether you want to go for labor intensive procedures, labor intensive method of production, or you would like to go for capital intensive production methods, right? Option C says, what will we produce? Again, you want to produce more of consumer goods or more of capital goods, or what type of products the economy needs to produce, right? D says, when will we produce? Yes, this is an incorrect response. So, for MCQ number 1, it has to be D. This is the least likely response. So, we'll shade in D for the first MCQ. All right. Number 2. MCQ number 2 talks about opportunity cost. Again, lots of us are familiar with the definition of opportunity cost. It is the cost of the best alternative foregone whenever a particular choice is made. So now, again, keeping the definition in mind, let's look at the options available. Option number 1 says what when we talk about what is opportunity cost, option number A says the allocation of resources in an economy. No, that's incorrect. B says the cost to the individual when they consume a good. No, that's a private cost. C says the lack of goods and services available to satisfy unlimited wants. That's incorrect. That's called what? Scarcity, right? When you got lack of goods. D says the next best alternative foregone when making an economic decision. That's exactly what the definition talks about. So for MCQ number 2, it has to be B. All right. So far, so good. Number 3. Number 3 MCQs has shown a PPC, a production possibility curve. The vertical axis displays good Y. The horizontal axis displays good X. Now, the question is seeing that the diagram shows a PPC curve for an economy that produces two goods, X and Y. All right. They are asking you which point shows the greatest opportunity cost of producing one more unit of good X. Now, look carefully at the diagram. They are saying if you decide to go for producing one more unit of good X, which point will reveal the greatest opportunity cost? This means what? This means as you move along the PPC, each more unit of you deciding to go for X, which means you will be giving up more of Y. You see, how will you be having more of opportunity cost? When you will be foregoing more of Y. When you will be giving up more of Y just to get one more unit of X. This means you will be having the greatest opportunity cost. I'll repeat. The greatest opportunity cost over here means that you want to go for a point in which having one more unit of X means sacrificing, giving up, foregoing larger units or more units of good Y. All right. Now, if you are at option D, this means you are what? Inefficient allocation of resources. So, if you are at a point D, if you'll move to any of the points on the PPC, you'll be better off. So, it can never be option D, right? So, you will chop D. Now, let's look at A. If you are at A, right? If you are at A and you want to produce more of X, so in order from A, if you are moving to produce just one more unit of X, you see, you will be foregoing less of Y and you'll be attaining more of X. So it cannot be A. Now, let's look at B. If you are at B and you want to produce one more unit of X, if you are at B and you want to produce one more unit of X, so now let's see. It's tilting, but then what I'm trying to show you is that you see it's almost either equal or you are going to be sacrificing less. But it's here when you are at point C that just to get this amount of X, you are sacrificing a larger quantity of Y. Get my point? This is what I wanted to show you. That when you are here at C, you will be giving up more of you will be giving up more of Y just to get one unit of X. In order to get one unit of X, you are sacrificing more quantity or larger units or more units of good Y, right? So this means at point C, you will be giving up more. So for number 3, it has to be C. The reason why I'm showing you is because I wanted you to explain it logically. All right? Number 4. Now, number 4 says a period of bad weather leads to a failure of the rice crop. All right. So now a bad weather led to a bad harvest. What is the effect on the market for rice? Now, if there has been a bad weather, so a failure of the rice crop would mean what? That there would be a shortage of rice. And whenever there's a shortage of something, what happens to the price? The price goes up or the price goes down? The price goes up. So keeping these two things in mind, when there's a shortage means what? The supply falls, the supply rises, supply falls. So the supply has to fall, the price has to rise, right? There has to be a shortage, right? This is the first hand reaction. This is the first hand impact whenever there's been a bad harvest. A shortage would arise, the supply would fall, and as a result, when there's a shortage of something, what happens? The price rises, the price falls, the price rises. Now look at the options. A says a shortage of rice, that's correct, and a fall in its price. So the second part is incorrect, so we'll chop A. B says a shortage of rice and a rise in its price, that's correct. But before marking B, let's look at the other options. C says a surplus of rice, no, it cannot be a surplus because they say a failure of the crop. D says a surplus of rice. Again, that's incorrect. So it has to be B. All right. Number 5. Number 5 says the diagram shows a change in the demand for coffee. All right. The vertical axis shows the price of coffee. The horizontal axis displays the quantity of coffee demanded per month. Now, what's happening to the demand curve? The entire demand curve is shifting outwards. Now, before I proceed, you tell me, the rule of thumb says what? Whenever there is a shift in the demand curve, that is because of factors other than the price of the good itself, right? Whenever there has been a shift in the curve, it has to be reasons other than the price of the good itself, right? So now what's the good here? Coffee. What's the vertical axis displaying? The price. The horizontal axis, the coffee, the demand for coffee per month, right? Now they are asking what is the reason why the entire demand curve has shifted towards the right. There has been a rise in the demand curve. This means what? This means at each and every price, now more and more quantity is demanded by the consumer. Get it? Now, keeping that in mind, let's look at the options. A says a good coffee harvest. Now, if it is a good coffee harvest, it has to be an impact on the supply of coffee and not on the demand. So you chop A. Right? Now, D says a successful advertising campaign for tea, not for coffee. If there has been a successful advertising campaign for tea, so the demand for tea should rise. Why would there be a surge in the demand for coffee? So that's incorrect. C says a rise in the wages of coffee workers. If there had been a rise in the wage of coffee workers, the supply would have shifted inwards. Here we are talking about the demand curve shifting towards the right. Again, C is incorrect. B. B says a rise in the price of substitute drinks. Yes, it's correct. Substitute for coffee would be what? Tea. So this means if there is a rise in the price for tea, there will be a rise in the demand for coffee. Why? Because coffee and tea are substitutes, and the rule of thumb says whenever there is a rise in the price of a substitute good, the demand for the other substitute good will rise. So if the price of tea would rise, there would be a demand for coffee increase, right? So by logic and by elimination, I've shown that for number 5, it has to be B, right? Hope this is clear. Number 6. Number 6 displays us a what? It's a supply schedule, right? Now they've listed the supply for a product at different prices. When it was $10, the supply was 120. When it was $12, the supply rose to 160. When it was 14, the supply was 200. Now they're saying if the price changes from 12 to 14, what will be the change in supply? Now, if the price rose from 12 to 14, what happened to the supply? The supply rose by 40 units, right? The supply rose by 40 units. Now let's look at the options. Number A says supply will contract by 40 units. So is the supply expanding, extending, or contracting? It's extending, right? So it's not contracting. So you will chop A and B. Why? Because both are talking about contraction. Now this is what? This is supply curve. I'm drawing a normal elastic supply curve. Now, if I'm drawing a normal supply curve, this means what? Like suppose if this was $12, see, this is the price and this is the quantity supply, right? Now, let's suppose this is the price in dollars. Here you are at 12 and now the price has risen to 14. So now, if you are at 14, initially what? You were selling 160, now you are selling 200, right? So what? You are on the same supply curve. The supply is what? Extending, right? So now the supply has extended by what? How many units? 40 units, right? Supply has extended by 40 units and there will be a movement up along the supply curve. This is what I wanted to show you, right? It cannot be D because both parts of option D are incorrect. D says supply will extend by 200 units. Supply is not extended by 200 units, so it's extending by 40 units. and there'll be an outward shift of the supply curve. No, there's not an outward shift of the supply curve because we are on the same supply curve. We are talking about the price of the product itself, and we know whenever we are talking about the price of the product itself, we are remaining on the same supply curve or on the same demand curve, right? All right. So for number six, it has to be C. Number seven. Number seven says, which now number seven is showing you an equilibrium situation. It's a supply curve and it's a demand curve of a product. Initially, we were at point X, we were at the equilibrium. Now they are saying which changes would move the equilibrium in the diagram from point X to point Z. So now you are moving from X to Z, you are coming here. So they're saying, how will you move? How will you come back? Now imagine if I want to go to Z, what will happen? If I want to go to Z, so there has to be an outward shift in the demand curve, right? There has to be an outward shift in the demand curve, and the supply curve has to shift upwards, right? So I have to move somewhere here. So this means what? This means the supply curve will move upwards and the demand curve will move outwards to the right. So the supply curve will move upwards and the demand curve will shift outwards now. So we will be here somewhere Z, right? So there will be an increase in demand or a decrease in demand. There will be an increase in demand or a decrease in demand. There has to be an increase in demand, right? Increase in demand. Increase in demand. What about the supply curve? There has to be a decrease in the supply because the supply curve is shifting upwards towards the left. So there has to be an increase in demand and a decrease in supply, and which means it has to be C. See, you can draw and derive the correct answer. Mark my words. All right. Number eight. Number eight says when the price of shirts rises from $8 to $10, the demand for shirts falls from 1,000 to 500. What are they asking? The value of the price elasticity of demand. What is price elasticity of demand? Come on. Yes, which measures the responsiveness of demand to the changes in price. So price elastic demand is percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in price. What about the percentage change in quantity demanded? Initially, the quantity was 1,000. It went to 500. So this means what? There's a fall of 50%. So the quantity demanded has fallen by a 50%. What about the price? Initially, the price was 8. Now the price rose to 10. So what is the change? Change is 2. Initial price was 8. So 2 upon 8 into 100 is yielding us what? 25%. So the price change is 25. The quantity change was 50. 50 over 25 is what? 2. So the price elasticity of demand is arriving at what? 2. Now, looking at the options, it's unitary. Unitary means 1. Less than 1, 0. Hamari value, what's the value we are arriving at? It's 2. So, it has to be A greater than 1. Right? All right. I hope this is clear. Number 9. Number 9 says a government intends to build a new international airport in an area of outstanding natural beauty. So now what's the government deciding? The government is deciding to construct an airport in a scenic beauty environment. Now they're saying what will be an external cost of this decision. We know external cost is cost borne by person either not consuming or producing the product. So the person is neither involved in the consumption nor is he or she is involved in production. The external costs are what? Borne by third party who are neither directly involved in the production nor the consumption of that good or service, right? Now, keeping that concept in mind, what would be an external cost? The cost of importing construction materials. No, that's what? It's a private cost. You chop A off. B says the enjoyment lost by those unable to use the countryside. Exactly. That's the answer. But before marking that, let's look at the other options available too. The increase in profits for local businesses. That would be what? The personal benefit, the right private benefit. This is the wages paid to the construction workers. Again, that would be the personal cost, right? So you'll chop C, you'll chop D. It has to be the enjoyment lost by those unable to use the countryside. That's an external cost. People who were neither involved in the decision of the construction, neither were they using it. So they are neither having any benefit nor a cost directly. They are indirectly having a loss of that scenic beauty which they had been otherwise enjoying had the airport not being constructed, right? So that's the benefit lost. So for 9, it has to be B. Keep your concepts intact and your answers would never go wrong. Mark my words. All right. Number 10. Number 10 says, what's an important role of a central bank? Come on, that's so easy. A says, attempts to achieve price stability. Excellent. That's the correct answer. B says, issues credit cards. C says, provides loans to producers. D says, provides saving accounts to consumers. These are all functions and roles of what? A commercial bank. Right? So A is the role of the central bank. So for 10, it has to be A. Number 11. Number 11 says, how would a change in the demand for labor affect the labor market in an occupation? How would the change in the demand for labor? So now they've given us a table. The first part shows the change in the demand for labor. So now we'll look at the first part of the table and then we'll say how a change in this first part affect the other two parts of the table. Get it? Now, let's look at the options. A says a decrease in the change in the demand for labor. This means what? If there has been a decrease in the demand for labor, right? So what would happen to the equilibrium wage? The equilibrium wage would fall, all right. What about the quantity supplied for labor? Extend? No, the labor supply should contract. Why? Because less labor would be willing to work at lesser wages, lesser rates. So A will be nullified. B says if the change in demand for labor is decreasing, this means if lesser labor is required, the equilibrium wage rate change would increase. You think the equilibrium wage rate would rise? No, it would fall because the demand is falling. So again, you'll chop B. C says change in demand for labor is increasing. All right, if more and more labor is increasing, the demand is rising, the change is rising. The change in equilibrium wage is decreasing. No, if there has been a surge, so the equilibrium wage should rise. Again, you will chop C. D says the change in demand for labor is increasing. All right, if more labor is going to be in demand, the equilibrium wage would increase. All right, and change in quantity supplied will extend. Exactly. So when more and more labor would be in demand, the equilibrium wage rate should rise, and as a result, there would be an extension. More labor would offer their services. So all three parts of the equation are correct. All three parts of this option is correct. Hence, for 11, it has to be D. Number 12. Number 12 says a fast food multinational bought a food ordering website. So it was an MNC that used to produce, and now what has it done is it has bought a food ordering website in order to allow the MNCs customers to download menus and make advance payments. Now they are asking us which term best describes this merger. What sort of a merger this is when you are moving forward, right? So it's what? Vertical integration forward. You are now moving from the source towards the production line ahead, right? So it has to be a vertical integration forward, right? It cannot be horizontal. It would be horizontal if there would have been a fast food MNC merging with another fast food MNC, right? It's not backward because you're not moving towards the sources of supply, right? If you are acquiring any raw materials vendor, then it could have been a vertical merger backward, right? So it has to be conglomerates is two unrelated industries, all right? So it has to be C. So by logic and by reasoning, I have shown you why for 12 it has to be C. Number 13. Number 13 says the diagram shows the average total cost for a firm in the long run. The vertical axis displays the cost, the horizontal displays the output. Initially, we were at average total cost 1. Now the entire cost curve has shifted. Now the entire cost curve has shifted from ATC1 to ATC2. This means the cost curve has shifted. This means your total cost is decreasing over the long run. So the entire cost curve has shifted. This means your costs have fallen. Average total cost is what? Variable cost plus fixed cost divided by what? The total output level. Right? Now what? Now they're asking you what would cause the shift? Why would the entire cost curve shift below, right? So the entire cost curve has fallen, right? A says difficulties in controlling the firm. You see, this means what? This means there would have been an added advantage, right? A is what? A negative. A is what? Something negative, right? Difficulties. If you have been difficulties in controlling the firm, so the cost would have been rising and not falling. So you chop A. Now look at B, C, and D. B says external economies of scale, C says managerial economies, and D says technical economies. Now, both C and D are what? Internal economies of scale. Right? So, now whenever usually the entire cost curve shifts, it has to be something related to what? The entire industry. So, there has been a growth of the entire industry. That is why your cost curve has fallen. So, it has to be B. C and D both are pointing towards internal economies of scale, right? So it cannot be C or D because both are talking about internal economies of scale. Here they are asking us for one reason. So it has to be B, right? The entire cost curve has changed, which means the growth of the entire industry has witnessed, right? That is why the average total cost is falling. So for 13, it has to be B. Number 14. Number 14 says what is most likely to encourage capital intensive production methods in a low income economy. So now your economy is low. That means what? Your GDP per capita is less. Why would a country go for capital intensive production methods? Why would a country go for production methods that involve more of machinery and less of labor? Let's look at the options. Expensive capital equipment. If the equipment would have been expensive, you would not go for capital intensive. You would be going for labor intensive. So you will chop A. Grants from foreign aid programs. Yes, that's correct. Because once you're getting aids, it will be easier for you to acquire and go for capital intensive production. Your cost would go low. Supplies of local, low cost labor. If your labor is cheap, you'll go for labor intensive method and not for capital intensive. But here you are going for capital intensive. So you're going against the question. Chop C. D says a shortage of highly trained supervisors. If you've got less of trained supervisors, would you be able to run this capital intensive production methods? No. So this means what? This is an incorrect option. So for 14, it has to be B. 15. A firm's average revenue is $20. It sells 1,000 units. So if average revenue is 20 and you're selling 1,000 units, so what should be the total revenue? 20 into 1,000, which means $20,000. So the total revenue has to be $20,000. So it either has to be C or D, right? So you chop A and B because it either has to be C and D looking at the first part. But what about the price? How will you know the price? Look at the table. Now look at the table. Option A says the total revenue was 20 and the price was 20. This means what? You were selling one unit only, right? So your price was 20. So your price is 20 and you're selling 20,000 units. And here also this is the average revenue is $20. But here also it tells you, right? Your total revenue is 20 and the price is 20. So this means you are selling one unit only. So this means 20 into 1. Your price was 20. It has to be 20 and 20,000. Has to be the total revenue. So for 15, it has to be C. I hope this is clear.